This is part 2 of Link to XML tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss creating an XML document using in-memory collection of objects. In part 1 of this video series, we discussed creating this XML document by hard coding these XML elements in code. If you recollect the example that we worked with in the previous video session, notice that student data is hard coded within the application. In real-time applications, data usually resides in a database table. There are several data access technologies that are available today to retrieve data from the database. For example, we could use ADO.NET or Link to SQL or Entity Framework. Once the application has retrieved data from the database, then the application may use data structures like arrays, lists, queues, etc. to store that data in memory for processing. For the purpose of this demo, let's assume that we already have the student data retrieved from the database and the application is storing it in an array. And now what we want to do is create this XML document from that array of student objects using Link to XML. So let's see how to achieve this. Let's flip to Visual Studio. So this is the same example that we worked with in the previous video session. The first thing that we are going to do here is add a class file to this project, and let's name this student.cs. To speed things up, I have already implemented the code required for this class, so let's copy it from the notepad and paste it within this class. So this class is straightforward. Here we've got 4 properties: ID, name, gender, and total marks. In addition, we also have this getAllStudents method, which returns an array of student objects. And within the method, we are creating a student array here, which is initialized to 4, which means we can store 4 student objects within that array, and here are those 4 student objects, and the method finally returns that array back. In reality, we will have ADO.NET or Link to SQL or some sort of data access code here to retrieve this data from the database. But to keep things simple, I've just hard-coded student data within this method. So now what we want to do is whatever student objects that this method is returning, we want to use Link to XML and convert these students into an XML document. So let's see how to achieve that. So within our main method, so this code is going to stay the same. So we still need the XML declaration, we still need that XML comment, and the root element within the XML is going to be students, and then within students root element we got student child elements, and each student child element has got name, gender, and total marks child elements. So we want to create the same kind of structure. So the code until here is not going to change. Let's remove this hard-coded student data from here, and I'm going to keep these 2 closing brackets here because the first closing bracket is actually going to close this root element, and the second closing bracket closes this XML document constructor. Okay, so here we are going to write a link query. So let's bring in system.link namespace. So system.link, and let's call the variable student in. We have got our student class getAllStudents, so this method is going to give us an array of student objects. So what we want to do with that student objects is select a new X element. So here is the root students element. Within that we want a child student element, and student element has got an ID attribute. So we are going to create a new instance of X attribute. So this class helps us create the XML attribute. So the name of the attribute is going to be ID. Now where are we going to get the student ID from? From this student object. So student dot ID property should give us that. And each student element has got name, gender, and total marks elements. Okay, so we are going to create an instance of X element again, and then the name of the element is going to be name, and we need to get student name. So for that we are going to use the student object again and then use the name property. Similarly, we want gender and total marks. So gender, and we are going to use the gender property of the student object, and finally total marks. Alright, so we're going to close this student element here. This closes the root element and this closes the final XML document. So that's all there to it. So what is this going to do? It's going to take each student object and then create a student element under this student's root element. Okay, so let's click on the show all files. Notice that we already have data.xml, so let's go ahead and delete that first, and then let's pin this down. Let's run our application. So now let's say show all files once again. Notice that we have our data.xml there, and notice that we have the exact same XML. So this is all the code that is required to create an XML document from an array of objects. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.